We are back to reading Pax Journey Home. This is the second book. We are ready for chapter 19, and I plan to read chapter 19 and 20 in this video, and then I will read more later. The last thing that happened is a Peter chapter, and Peter is connecting with the two people that he is traveling with. The last moment was a very emotional moment. Peter allowed them to hug him, and he's really starting to get close with them, which makes him nervous. The last thing with Pax, his daughter had followed him and she drank some of the water out of the pond that we know is unhealthy. So back to a Pax chapter 19. For 3 days, Pax and the kit rested at the still pond. Each day, Pax left at twilight to hunt on the other side of the ridge where there was game, snatching his prey on the run because his skin prickled with anxiety whenever he could not watch over his kit. The kit was restless on the first day. She grew irritable when her father would not allow her to explore, when he insisted on carrying her the short distance to the water. After she drank, she waded into the still pond and she After she drank, he waded into the still pond and she followed. When cold water circled her neck, she looked up at him unsure. Pax swam away and then turned back and barked for her. The kit plunged. Once, twice, 3 times. She thrashed and went under and came up sputtering. But Pax swam by her side, encouraging her with his calm, and soon she was paddling through the water. On the second day, though, she lay quietly and did not try to leave the nest. He brought her to the pond, and after she'd drunk, Pax urged her to try moving through the water again. She swam listlessly for a while, and then she wanted to be carried back to the nest. On the third day, she barely lifted her head off the prickly boughs. That day, Pax found no game, even across the ridge. He hurried back and nudged his daughter awake. It is time to move on. She rose and blinked in the clear rays of the afternoon sun, but then crumpled into her side, her left hind leg twitching. Puzzled, Pax checked her over thoroughly. Her paws had healed. He could find no other injuries. He urged her up. It is not safe here any longer. We will swim across the pond to leave no trail. She got up again and staggered after her father to the shore. It did not take long to cross the small pond, but when she reached the shore, the little fox collapsed where she landed and closed her eyes. Pax shook his fur dry and climbed onto a broad rock to read the wind. Drifting from the east, it brought news from the river just a short run away. Fair weather, no grass fires, but a campfire. And a shock. His boy. His boy was near. Peter, gone from him over a year. Peter, whom he had loved for most of his life and then learned to live without, was near. Pax stilled himself, concentrated, and confirmed. Yes, his boy was at the river with another human, maybe two. His thigh muscles tightened with the old urge to run to him, as though no time had passed, but he held back. Because time had passed. There had been a long stretch of it, all through the last summer, when Pax had expected Peter to return to find him and bring him home. But that had faded with the summer warmth, and by fall, he'd come to understand that his home was with Bristle, wherever it was that she felt safe. And when he'd settled in the deserted farm with her, he'd stopped watching for Peter completely. The breeze freshened. A new sweet scent, mingled with the smell of firewood and his boy, triggered a memory. When he'd been very young, Pax had gone with Peter and his father to live in the woods for a few days in a small cloth house by a stream. So that'd be a tent. His boy's father had built a fire, and they'd cooked food, and Peter had shared his food with Pax. Later, the humans had held sticks over the coals, and a sweet, sweet smell, strange but appealing, had arisen from the white tips, and Pax had watched Peter and his father eat the good-smelling white tips. Tempted, Pax had darted in and snatched up a stick Peter had laid on a stone beside him. He had yelped, surprised by how hot the marshmallow was, smeared over his snout. And his boy had leaped up, stripped off his shirt, and soaked it in the stream, then held the cool cloth over Pax's muzzle, soothing him and hugging him. Pax had felt safe and loved. Pax drew in the wind again. He found the scent of the boy he missed, and he decided. He bounded over to his daughter and nudged her awake. We are leaving now. It is not far to the river. She rose, but he could see that she was still exhausted from the swim across the pond. He would have to carry her, and to travel encumbered that way, he would need the benefit of light. He led her to a clump of dried blue stem grass. Rest now. We will leave at dawn. So if your prediction's like mine, he is maybe going to take her to his boy. Chapter 20. This is the last of them. Samuel had out the bag of marshmallows along with 3 willow sticks. Peter took a stick and threaded a marshmallow. The night was chilly. The fire had died to embers. It was a perfect time for them. Watching it brown, he was struck by a memory. For his 8th birthday, his dad had taken him camping, and it allowed him to bring packs. The weekend had been great, but the last night, sitting around a fire, Peter had made a mistake. He'd laid a marshmallow down to cool beside him, and Pax had snatched it up. Peter had wrapped the young fox's burnt snout in a wet t-shirt quickly, but afterward he'd felt so terrible that he told his father he thought he didn't deserve to have a pet. Well, now that's not how I see it, his father had answered. He'd pointed at Pax sleeping on Peter's lap. And I don't think that's how your fox sees it either. See, I think it's just the opposite. An accident happened and you jumped up and took good care of your pet. You were responsible. That's how I see it. Maybe your fox just knew that when he was hurt, you made it better. At 8, it had seemed a shocking insight that a single act could be viewed different ways, and Peter had fallen asleep pondering it. Actually, even at nearly 14, it still seemed kind of a magic trick. Beside him, Samuel stood up and broke Peter's reverie. He handed out the 3 pairs of boots that had been drying by the fire. We should get some sleep, he said. We have to leave before dawn tomorrow. Peter tugged on his boots. How come? The first crew of water warriors will be setting out from this reservoir tomorrow. We've got a lot of ground to cover in the next few days to make it to the next site before they get there. We should turn in early. I'll be glad to go, Jade said, although she didn't make a move to get up. This is the place, Peter. That pond I told you about is just west of here. I don't like remembering about those raccoons. She checked her boots, then placed them back by the coals, still wet. She shivered, and Peter thought maybe she was imagining what might have happened to the raccoon babies, but that wasn't it. She leaned over her feet and squeezed her toes. They're always cold, she lamented. And look at these army-issue socks. Give me some real wool. Samuel laughed in agreement. True, always cold. But Peter grew still. He pulled his marshmallow from the fire and set it aside. Another memory stabbed him. When he was little, his mother used to read to him in his bed. Peter curled on his side to see the illustrations. Halfway through the story, she would itch her bare feet under his knees, saying, "Icicles, brr!" And it was true. Her feet were cold. But Peter always held his knees over them, and she always made a big deal of marveling at how warm they were, and he always glowed with little boy pride. For a minute, he imagined offering his knees to Jade. He would do it with a no big deal shrug because it would just be an act of kindness. And who would understand kindness more than this girl? It would be okay. But no, maybe it wouldn't be okay. The sensation of another body's touching his, even through clothing. Sometimes Vola would brush his shoulder or rest her hand over his when she was showing him how to use a tool. Or even those things shook him a little. Yesterday's hug felt like it had broken something inside him, and he couldn't tell whether it was a good thing or not. Just then, Jade stretched a leg out, tapped her toes on his hip. "Icicles, brr!" she laughed. Peter felt his throat tighten. He locked his chin, squeezed his lids against the tears, turned his face away. "I'm tired," he said. "I'll unpack the bedrolls." He rose, but Jade jumped to her feet and stayed him with a hand to the wrist. "I'm sorry, whatever it was I said." Peter scrubbed a palm across his eyes. "It's the smoke. You didn't say anything wrong. And I'm tired is all. A lot of hiking today." "Sure, I'm still sorry. It's just that you're a very serious boy. I guess I wanted to see you laugh. Go get some sleep." Peter made his escape. He washed up and then spread out a bedroll, choosing a spot on the far side of the fire on a hard, flat stretch of rock covered in lichen. He removed the box holding his father's ashes from his pack. He set it carefully at the pillow end and tucked his sweatshirt around it. Then he crawled in, turned his back to the fire, and zipped up the bedroll all the way. All right, and I will see you for another couple chapters very soon. I hope you're having a great summer.